Hello and welcome wherever and whenever you are. And thank you for joining us for the Funding the Commons Virtual Summit. This event showcases individuals and organizations building new models of sustainable public goods funding and value alignment in open source networks. My name is Karola Kirsanow, and I'll be your MC for today's event. I'm a member of the research team at Protocol Labs, an open source R&D lab building the next generation of the internet, and finding the tools and incentives to drive technological progress in a distributed system is an important part of that work. This is the second in a continuing series of events, bringing together researchers and thought leaders to discuss novel experiments and future directions for funding our collective commons. You can watch the presentations from the inaugural Funding the Commons event held last November on the Funding the Commons website. We are super excited to present a fantastic lineup of speakers on a wide variety of topics related to public goods funding over a 2-day virtual event. We are looking forward to a lively discussion about new paradigms for encouraging open source innovation and the maintenance of critical projects, new system engineering approaches to incentivizing risky research, new incentives, mechanisms, and markets for funding public goods at scale, and new ways of coordinating alignment on ambitious research projects. We'll also share what we've learned from the public goods funding and network funding experiments we've started since our last Funding the Commons Summit. Stay tuned for experimental results and measurements from the field laboratory. Today's talks will be arranged in 4 blocks with a brief coffee break between each session for you to catch your breath and collect your thoughts. And now, on to the summit. We'll kick things off with a welcome from our conference organizer.
Hi, Carla. Thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I feel like I will be going into slightly deeper depth, welcoming everyone and providing an overview and some initial context for what we'll be talking about and what you'll be hearing about today and tomorrow. And hope to get finished right on schedule so that we can kick off the fireside chat with Juan Benet and Jan Tallinn right on time. Overall, the motivation for this event comes from the fact that we at Protocol Labs and we in the broader Web3 community have found a lot of people believe that humanity needs better tools for collaboration, and a lot of the innovation from the Web3 community, decentralization movement, and relevant cryptocurrency tools could be the necessary components to fantastically upscale the amount of collaboration and the efficacy of collaboration we have. Overall, we're very excited to announce that this will be a recurring event. We're partnering with Rich from the Berkeley Existential Risk Initiative and doing more events partnered with Gitcoin and the Shelling Point series. And so that'll be a exciting set of events and collaborations and strong synergies to look forward to. Additionally, for those of you who aren't too familiar with Protocol Labs, our mission is generally to drive breakthroughs in computing to push humanity forward. And the Protocol Labs research team, which I've been leading for the last few years, has a goal of maximize the likelihood that future's ubiquitous technology will be accessible and empowering for users. I think that there's definitely some easy to extrapolate paths by which we can see that technological progress could lead to places that are either massively empowering to people, where you have an interface that can allow your computer to do the things that you're thinking of, and you have artificial general intelligences to give you godlike powers over virtual worlds of your own. Or you could imagine horrific dystopian futures where humans are pets for artificial intelligences, and corporations can spy on you through the electronics you wear that are so invasive they can hear your very thoughts, and things like the climate continue to spiral out of control. And so the thing that I highlight is that there's this fantastic perspective that humanity could be sleepwalking towards a dystopia. We are so focused on what we are doing now, why we are doing it, we often lose sight of where we're going, where this path leads, and whether or not we actually even want to be on this path. And so I like to think of these incentive gradients where everyone's making progress, but not necessarily the progress that you would want if everyone were fully aware of the consequences of their actions as much as you might hope. And so I think of the either Hanlon's razor, usually framed as never ascribed to malice, which can be adequately justified by stupidity. And I like to give a more charitable framing of it's driven by misunderstandings or lethargy. I tend to think that people are intrinsically good and want good futures for themselves and for humanity on the whole. But to the same extent that no single raindrop feels responsible for the flood, I think no single human feels responsible for the technological progress that they may or may not be pushing towards a good or a bad future. And so you'll see headlines where there are clear indicators that progress is not necessarily going in the way that you might hope or expect. And I think that some of this has to do with the fact that a very top-down approach for planning mega projects, typically one individual with all the power delegates and builds out some organizational structure to make something, like in this case, a Manhattan project happen. And the question that I would pose to all of us today is there some alternative to this top-down direction that looks more like self-assembly, where you have something that looks more like the transition from a centralized infrastructure to something decentralized, where we acknowledge that decentralization comes with costs, but also comes with benefits. And the hope is that if you have the right tools, you can have, you can reduce the costs and really harvest all of those benefits. Overall, the Funding the Commons event series and our general philosophy has taken the form of trying to generate mechanisms or tools for decentralized planning and coordination, and then pair those mechanisms with experts and funding sources or reputation sources of some sort, try to drive progress against shared goals. Some of these goals are well-funded corporations, many of them aren't. Some of them are common goods, some of them are public goods. You'll see that some of the various talks throughout today and tomorrow will cover various aspects of one or the other. But it's also worth noting that to a large extent, a lot of these goods, it's unclear just how excludable or unexcludable some of them are, and just how rivalrous or non-rivalrous some of them are. Even classic examples like clean air being a non-rivalrous has been found to be something that some people can abuse, take advantage of, and essentially take from others. So you might also hear a category being referred to as networked goods, where you have these goods that are dependent on the governance tools or systems of commons, but also maybe to some extent unrivalrous. We are looking at, you'll hear in this conference about tools for coordinating and eliciting plans for to maximize the likelihood of these long-term futures and empower people who are doing the work day to day to help avoid utopian outcomes based on the kinds of dependencies you expect through breakthroughs. We also are interested in matchmaking funders, builders, and experts. And so you'll hear from people who are in each of those categories, some who are even in multiple of those categories. And we're all interested in building better alternatives to grants, bounties, decentralized competition, systems for funding where you may have stronger game theoretic assurances or economic assurances around the behavior of various actors in a system, different mechanisms where you might expect better capabilities to evaluate the positive impact that systems have had. And overall, we expect that there'll be valuable proposals that will, over the course of the series of events, the series of Funding the Commons events, you'll be able to watch the development from initial proposal to experiment, to refined experiment, to something that is robust enough that it will get adopted by far more funders, builders, researchers, contributors, et cetera. Anyway, there's loads to look forward to. We have a fantastic speaker lineup, and in order to maximize the amount of time for the next event, I'm happy to end a little bit early and pass this, I believe, back to Carla to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.